Hello everyone, it's Nightdagger, and I've been waiting to do this for quite a while, and it's time to get started. Yep, that's right, this is Dwarf Fortress with Nightdagger, Histories of Avarice and Dynamism. And I've already done a little bit of work here. Now, I haven't actually started a settlement. I have generated the world in advance. So we're just going to go in to start playing. If you go into create new world, it's going to give you a whole bunch of preset options that you can choose from, like how big do you want the world, small, medium, large, whatever. How many minerals do you want? Honestly, it really doesn't make a huge difference what you set on those things. The biggest thing to note with the latest version of Dwarf Fortress is do not set the mineral density to everywhere, or you will probably not have any fluxstone on the map. So, fluxstone is important. It allows you to make steel. Without it, you're kind of borked. But I've already created the world, so let's go ahead and start playing. I haven't even looked at this world yet, so I don't know if there's any good sites or not, but we're going to take a look around. We're going to go into Dwarf Fortress mode. I don't really play Adventurer mode, and Legends is basically just exploring the history of the region. It's fun to dink around in, but Dwarf Fortress is the main game here. This is going to load up here. Maybe one of these days at some point. Actually, I have my caps lock key on, so there we go. Alright, so this is our local area. If you use the arrow keys, it goes back, forth, up, and down on the region map. If you use UMKH, it moves around on the local map. You see on the local map I'm moving around now? If you hold down Shift and hit the arrow keys, it makes a big jump on the world map. You can see I'm moving one square on the world map now. So you can kind of look around the map and see if you can find an area that would be good to build in. But there's an easier way to do this, and it is, if you follow my mouse cursor, it is the Find Desired Location button down here. So you hit F. This allows you to look for a specific location. Now, what I usually look for in a good fortress is I want clay. I do want soil, but we don't really need a whole lot, so I usually set it for some soil. We want multiple deep metals. We want multiple shallow metals. We want a place with a river, but we do not want a place with an aquifer. An aquifer is basically a layer of ground that has been soaked through with water. On the bright side, it means that your fort has unlimited water. On the downside, it means that unlimited water usually goes into your fort and floods it and drowns everyone. Aquifers are generally bad. They're a pain in the ass to get around. If you're on the wrong type of map, it can even completely prevent you from getting to the stone, which makes Dwarf Fortress kind of pointless. And we do want fluxstone, so we are going to hit enter and let it do a search for us. Now this does take a little while. It's searching a whole bunch of different locations on the map, and it's looking to match our qualifications as best as it can. It's already found at least one match. If you look on the world map, it is the green region. The region that's flashing with the green X right here. But we're going to let it keep looking. Anything else yet? Frame rate has dropped down to 1 FPS. Looks like we might have a partial match up there. Anyway, yeah, I have been waiting to do this for a long time. Dwarf Fortress is one of those games where you can just have so much fun with it because it's all about being completely ridiculous. The general idea of the game is it's kind of like The Sims with dwarves, goblins, and beer. That's the best way I can put it. You take a whole bunch of dwarves, 7 to start, and then you get more as the game goes along. You take them out of the wilds, you build a dwarven settlement, you farm, you brew booze, you mine, you make weapons, you make armor, and then you die in some fashion or another. There is no way to win Dwarf Fortress. There are thousands of ways to lose Dwarf Fortress, but there is no way to win Dwarf Fortress. Just remember, losing is fun. That's the motto of this game. Losing is fun. The only way to win Dwarf Fortress is to lose in such a spectacular fashion that all of the other players on the forum, when you post a description of it, say, you know what, that's pretty good. You won. But we do have a couple of suitable sites, so we're going to hit enter to, or we're going to hit space to browse the results. And it's going to be the green flashing spots that we're looking at. So the first one is right here. It's warm, it has scarce trees, the surroundings of wilderness, sparse trees. That's a temperate grassland over there. Let's move over a little bit and see. Yeah, see, we moved over a little bit and now we're in an aquifer. That's bad. So that's going to give us a little chunk over there where we're going to have the possibility of fluxstone. And over here we're going to have shallow metals and deep metals. Now, one thing to note here, note the plural. There are places that have shallow metal, not shallow metals. You want to look for the plural here. We do have some soil, which will make farming really easy. Over here, yeah, see, shallow metal. That means there isn't a whole lot of metal in that area. Let's go take a look at the other sites that it found for us, and we'll make a decision on where to settle. Oh, I've actually found two here. Alright, the first one is here. This one is warm. It's heavily forested, which is great. Shallow metal. And there's shallow metals. So this is actually a very nice spot. This tiny, about half the map has no trees, about half the map is thickly forested. Let's hit tab. There are goblins nearby, which means we're going to have some fun at some point here. Remember what I said about fun. Bunch of civilizations we have to choose from. As far as the general surroundings, it looks like it's pretty flat. There's some slopes, but there isn't really a whole lot of craggy territory, which is nice because it makes it easily defensible. Craggy territory is it's okay, but if you're trying to build like a kill area, a funnel where enemies have to go through to reach your fortress, it's harder because you have to spend a lot more time terraforming the land, removing ramps and stuff to force them to take the paths that you want them to take. So flat land actually serves us pretty well. So we're going to remember this area, and we're going to go take a look at the other ones. Now this one here, we have pretty much the same thing, but here we only have it on that one tiny little spot. Let's see if we can move it without getting an aquifer. Yeah, we could move it right here. And that way we would have more trees. We'd still have the river in the one corner there. And we'd still have the clay, the shallow metal. Now, it's shallow metal, not shallow metals. So we're probably going to want more than that. We're probably going to want it like this. But let's go check the last site before we make a really solid decision. Alright, and this is the last site. Shallow metals, deep metals. And it's warm. It's a woodland area, so it's not as thickly forested. It's a temperate freshwater marsh. And there's a brook here, which means it's a very small river. The kind that a dwarf can walk through without having to build a bridge. Unfortunately, it's also the kind that an enemy can walk through without having to build a bridge. So it limits your defensive possibilities a little bit. There is a civilization very close to us here. Olterlenim, or whatever that is. I have no idea what kind of city that is. For all I know, it could be a goblin stronghold. However, this does seem to be probably the best option compared to the other ones. Oh, we got an aquifer there. We can't go any further to that side, or we're in aquifer territory. And if we go any more up, we're in aquifer territory, so we'd have to build it like right here to avoid that. So the aquifer is on the right-hand side there. We could probably build here and get away with it, but knowing me, I'll forget about the aquifer and just end up totally screwed. So I don't know, this one gives the best option for metals, but it's really, really close to that of the civilization. If that turns out to be a goblin civilization, we are totally borked. But you know what? Let's go ahead. We are going to pick this area. What you do here is you hit E to embark, and then it's going to give you a set of options. I'm using the Lazy Noob Pack, so I have a couple of preset options. Now, I also have a couple of options that I made myself. I'm going to use the Nightdagger configuration here, and it's going to tell me the embark preparations were not completed. Now, it has this kind of bug where it kind of blacks out part of the screen. If you hit tab and then come back, it fixes it. As you can see here, I have 2 miners. These are both proficient miners and nothing else. Their only job is going to be to dig. This guy here is a mason and a building designer. He's going to handle all of the stonework for me, and he's also going to handle designing the buildings. This guy here is a brewer and an herbalist. He can go out and gather wild plants, and he can also turn plants into booze. This guy is probably one of the most important dwarves a dwarf can have, because dwarves thrive on booze. The only time a dwarf will drink water is if he's hurt, and then he won't drink booze, which seems completely backwards to me, because it seems to me like that's when you'd want to have the booze. But, whatever. This guy here is a grower and a cook. Now, I have this guy as a grower and a cook because early on you don't really have to spend a whole lot of time farming, but you want to have some good meals for your dwarves. Later on I'm going to need multiple growers, at which point I'll probably, depending on whether this guy is getting better as a cook or a grower, I'll probably delegate one of those to someone else. This guy here is a woodcutter. He's also an axeman. So if he gets attacked, or if the fort gets attacked early, he knows how to use the battle axe as a weapon and can protect us. And then this guy here is my noble dwarf. He is a proficient diagnostician, which means he's a doctor. He's also a novice negotiator, intimidator, judge of intent, appraiser, and leader. Which means that this guy here is my trading dwarf and the dwarf who negotiates with other civilizations. If we hit tab, we go over to the items screen. You can see I'm bringing along a dog from both the male and the female. A male and a female cat. Now, I know a lot of veteran Dwarf Fortress players are probably snickering, but if you haven't been keeping up, cat explosions aren't nearly as big a deal anymore. They can still happen, but it takes a little bit of negligence on your part to make it happen. So, not too bad. I also have 4 hens and a rooster to give me some eggs. And over here I've got pickaxes for my miners. I've got a battle axe for my woodcutter. I think you can still get away with using a wooden battle axe to chop down trees, but it's useless as a weapon. And I like having the option to use it as a weapon, so I'm willing to spend the points early on. I have an iron anvil. Without an anvil, you can't make an anvil. And without an anvil, you can't make a smithy, which means you can't make weapons, which means you're pretty screwed until the first caravan comes, and then you have to trade for your anvil. If they didn't bring one, you're really screwed. So, you always want to have an anvil. You can get away with not bringing picks, you can get away with not bringing a battle axe if you import some metal. You can't get away without an anvil. I'm bringing along 31 portions of each type of dwarven booze. I'm also bringing along some of the seeds. The only type of seed I'm not bringing is the dimple cup, which is used to make dye, nothing else. Right now, I mean, if I need it later, I'll import it. Right now, I don't need it. These are all food seeds. They're all very good. I'm also bringing along a little bit of stone to get started, and a little bit of wood. I have some thread, some splints, some crutches, some ropes, and I have a bucket. This is for making an early well if I need to, and if I have any really early injuries. Now, notice that I don't have any food that I'm bringing along. That was the problems. There's no cave lobster and no mountain goat meat. So, let's double tab here, and then let's hit New Item by hitting N. And we're going to come down here, we're going to go to Fish, and we're just going to take Cave Lobster. We'll bring along 20 cave lobsters, actually 21 cave lobsters. Odd numbers. I don't know if it still works this way or not, but it used to be that if you brought along an odd number of something, you would get an extra barrel. It doesn't really matter too much anymore because of rock pots. It's not like you have to farm tons of trees to make barrels anymore. But still, old habits die hard. Ooh, dingo meat. Oh, wait, nope. Chopped dingo liver. That sounds tasty. Dwarves are gonna love... Oh, wait, nope, that's 4 points each. We don't want a 4-point food. We want a 2-point food. Prepared one-humped camel eye. That's some tasty stuff. Alright, so we are done with our item preparations. Let's pick a name for the fortress. And I'm just going to hit random a couple of times and see what it gives us. Everrope? Lame. Base's wound? Eh. Wall-nourished? As opposed to malnourished? Basement tinks? No. Scoured shot? No. Balance copper? No. Bolted rasp? Eh. Bus creatures? Eh. Boat sequel? No, I'm not gonna do a... No, I'm not gonna do a boat murder sequel. That's just a bad omen. Woundomen? You know what? Let's go ahead with Woundomen. And let's name our group the Rack of Perplexing. The Youthful Orb, the Glad Seals, the Heavy Paddles, the Room of Hardiness, the Violent Blockade. That sounds like a proper dwarven name. Alright, and we're ready. 16 minutes into the video, and we're just now getting ready to play. Let's go ahead and embark. And we wait for it to think a little bit. Wait for it to think a little more. You have arrived. After a journey from the mountain homes into the forbidding wilderness beyond, your harsh trek has finally ended. Your party of 7 is to make an outpost for the glory of all of... my texture pack is messing it up. Basically, welcome to Woundomen. Enjoy your stay. And here we are at the main Dwarf Fortress screen. For some reason, my dwarves decided to park their wagon in the frickin' brook. Good job. Alright, let's take a look around. Now, the first thing I usually do, I don't use the minimap off to the right. So I hit tab twice, and that leaves me a nice big viewing area where I can take a look at my surroundings. And what's over here? Hit K to look around. This is sandy clay. And then this is fire clay. And let's come over here and let's page down a little bit. And let's see what kind of... Is this chalk? No, it's dolomite. Can't remember if dolomite is a flux or not. I think it is. If dolomite... Ooh, is this lignite? No, it's bituminous coal. It's even better. Bituminous coal will cut down on my need for wood. Because if you smelt wood in a wood furnace, you get 1 piece of charcoal. If you cook up bituminous coal in a smelter, you get 3 pieces of charcoal. So that's a good find. And it looks like we got a ton of it too, so that's good. Okay, let's go back up. And let's start looking around for a place to put... Is that an underground river? No, it's just... There's my dwarves again. Looking for a good place to put the fort entrance. I don't want to put it on this level probably, because then the river is going to split the amount of room that I have to work. So what I'm probably going to want to do... Is this a... Oh, that's a waterfall. Wow. That's a tall waterfall. Alright, so what I'm probably going to want to do is I'm probably going to want to put my entrance down here somewhere. Actually, no, I don't want to put my entrance down there. Is the river up 1? Yeah, the river's up 1, which is going to make digging over here a pain in the ass because I'm going to get cancellation warnings all the time, but this also gives me the most room to work with on a soil level, which is kind of important for farming. So I think what I might do is I might put my fort entrance... Do I want to have it up on here? Yeah, I want to have it up here, I think. So I'm going to put my fort entrance right here. I'm going to hit space. I have my configuration changed a little bit. Space is back out of a menu for me. By default, it's escape. I'm just used to it this way. So let's cancel out of that, and then I think what I'm going to do... Nothing really lends itself well to my usual building style. So I'm just going to carve out a little section here. No, we don't want to chop down trees, we want to mine. So we're going to mine that out. And we're going to remove the upward slope from there. And we're going to wait for my mining dwarves to get their pickaxes and come down here and start going to work. Alright, and now we will dig a tiny little space there, and then we're going to dig like that to give us a nice straight path coming down. And then just inside the wall here, I'm going to want a nice big room. This is where I'm going to end up putting my barracks. I usually have my barracks right at the entrance of my fort, because if my barracks is right at the entrance of my fort, any enemies that get into my fort have to go through my military to get to the rest of my dwarves. So it's a good defensible idea, and for right now it'll also give me a nice place where I can store resources and build a dormitory and get my basic production going. It'll get my dwarves out of the rain. Is this sand that I'm digging through? Yes, it's black sand, which also means I can work with glass. Nice. Wait for my dwarves to dig, and dwarves, being what they are, kind of derp around a little bit. Actually, you know what? I want to cancel the designation right there because I want to leave space to put doors there too. Wait for the dwarves to finish digging this out. It's also nice starting in a nice sandy area or digging in the dirt to start out with, because by default your dwarves are kind of slow at this, and by digging in the dirt you give them a chance to increase their mining skill without making them go through all the stone and stuff. In the meantime, let's go ahead and let's build a workshop, BW. We want a carpenter's workshop, C. We're going to put it right there. We're going to build it out of granite. And we'll back out and let the dwarves get to work. My carpenter should be coming down here with a piece of the granite that I originally brought with me. While the rest of my dwarves, or my two mining dwarves, go down there. The rest of them are just kind of derping around at the initial site. If you hit F1, you can go back to the wagon. And why is my carpenter not doing anything? What a derp. Needs carpentry. I thought I had a carpenter. Oh well. It's time to show off a utility that no Dwarf Fortress player should be without. It is called Dwarf Therapist. It's this thing right here. I'm going to connect to Dwarf Fortress, and it's going to read my dwarves for me. You can see here I don't have a dwarf with carpentry enabled. That's why nobody's building my carpenter. For right now, the most useless dwarf is going to be my trader, so I'm going to have him be my temporary carpenter. If you click on the little dot there, it's going to enable the labor, but in order to actually make it work, you have to commit the change. So he now has carpentry turned on, and if we come back to Dwarf Fortress here, now he's going to grab the granite, haul it down here, and build the carpenter's workshop for me. In the meantime, I also want to start getting a few more trees. So we're going to designate to cut down trees, and this little space right here, there aren't many, but it'll get us a start. And there goes that dwarf, hard at work cutting trees. Here comes my noble dwarf lugging that heavy granite rock. And now he's finished it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, no, we're not going to do that yet. We're going to designate a stockpile. Hit P to designate stockpiles, and then we want a wood stockpile. So W. And we're just going to put it right here. We're not going to need a big wood stockpile to start out, so we're just going to do that. We're also going to want a stone stockpile. Again, we don't need a big one to start out, just a little. We're going to need a food stockpile. This one we're going to want to have fairly big. So that looks about good for a food stockpile. And then over here, I'm going to put one more stockpile. But this is going to be a custom stockpile. Now with the custom stockpile, if you hit space to cancel out and then query it with Q, you can change the settings. We are going to enable everything except for food, stone, wood, and corpses refuse. That way anything else that we have that needs to be stockpiled, they'll stockpile it there. We're also going to increase the max number of bins by holding, you can hit V to increase it by one at a time, or you can hold Shift and V to increase it to the maximum amount. And we're going to do the same with barrels with Shift R. Alright. We're going to unpause this, and one more thing that we want to do, we want to go back to the original wagon. We want to hit Q to query it, and we want to hit X to designate it for removal. There is a little bit of wood in your initial wagon. When you disassemble the wagon, you get that wood back. So we'll hit this, and we'll let our dwarves get to stockpiling stuff for us. We got chickens, we got an ox. Looks like we got a couple of ox. So I think right here I'm going to designate a zone, which you do with I. I'm going to put it right here. Just like that. I'm going to designate this as a pasture. And then if you hold Shift N, it'll let you set the information, which allows you to designate which animals go to that pasture. We want the yak bull and the water buffalo cow to go there because they have to graze. If they don't graze, they die. So those two animals will automatically walk there, and they will happily nom on all the grass in that area. In the meantime, my dwarves are still busy moving food and lumber and everything in. Now there's a couple of things that I'm going to have to do relatively early in the game here. Let me pause while I talk about this. There are several ways for forts to die in the very early game. The first is starvation. If you don't have any food, you die. The second is thirst. Nothing will bring a fort to a standstill faster than dwarves who don't have alcohol. They don't need alcohol if they can get water, but a dwarf who doesn't have a drink will get progressively unhappier and unhappier. He will slow down, and eventually he just won't want to do anything. It makes dwarves more prone to temper tantrums. It just leads to bad things. If you have to choose between food and booze, well, if you have to choose between food and booze, you're already screwed, but you may as well just take the booze, because, you know, a trade caravan might show up and you might be able to barter for some food. On that subject, yeah, trade. We want to be able to export something. So we need to decide what we want to export and how we're going to get it. Early game, stonecrafts is a good way to earn some starting money, but Eventually, we'll want to branch out into selling clothing or food or weapons and armor or something. With the amount of metal that we're hoping is going to be on this map and all of the bituminous coal, it seems relatively intuitive that we would want to specialize in smithing. Because, I mean, that's what dwarves do, right? They work metal, they dig the earth, they bring up the ore, they make things of absolute wonder, and they kill goblins, which I'm sure we're going to have our fair share of too. On that subject, defense. The biggest thing that usually kills forts is goblins. Whether it's just a goblin ambush that comes at the wrong time, or whether it's a goblin snatcher who comes in, steals someone's daughter, and sets off something which I'll talk about in a minute, or whether it's a full-blown goblin siege complete with flying bats and dragons and all sorts of bad shit. Invaders generally wipe out most forts. The other thing that wipes out most forts is the dreaded tantrum spiral. Dwarves are very fickle creatures. They have happy thoughts and they have unhappy thoughts. If a dwarf's unhappy thoughts exceed his happy thoughts, he will get progressively more unhappy and will eventually just completely wig out and sometimes take the entire fortress down with him. What's worse is that even if he doesn't wig out and take the entire fortress down with him, when he inevitably wastes away and dies of starvation, his mother and his father and his sisters and brothers, if they happen to be in the fort, and his friends and his family, they all get a very wickedly big unhappy thought from losing one of their loved ones, and then they might go into a tantrum. And then they do something like breaking a masterpiece, and the dwarf that makes the masterpiece says, "Hey, you asshole, that was mine," and turns around and punches the carpenter, who turns around and takes his axe and chops off the baker's nose, who goes to the doctor and finds out the doctor doesn't have enough sutures to put it back together and cuts the doctor's heart out with a scalpel, and yeah. You think I'm over-exaggerating here. Stuff like this does happen in Dwarf Fortress. This is called a tantrum spiral. Once it starts, it's very hard to stop. That said, dwarves, like I said, are very fickle creatures. A dwarf can survive having his daughter and his wife killed in a horrific goblin invasion and not being able to recover their corpses, so the goblins are out there dancing all over their corpses and pissing on the bodies and whatever else goblins do to defile the dead. And he can be perfectly okay with this as long as he had a really good drink in a really fucking well decorated dining room. Again, you think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. Dwarf Fortress. Alright, so now that we know what we have to defend against, let's go ahead and get started with some of the planning. The first plan that we need is for defense. The second plan we need is production of food and drink. The third we need is trade. I have ideas for all of these so far, but for right now, defense isn't a major problem right now. I haven't seen any icons on the screen that would lead me to believe that I'm in any danger at the moment, but let's go ahead and check it. If you hit U, it brings up a unit list. Now, the only dwarves, the only citizens that are on the screen right now are these 7. If we page over to here, we get our pets. We have some stray dogs, some stray cats, and all of these. Over here, we have others. There are a bunch of dingoes running around, but they're not generally aggressive unless you piss them off. So I don't think I'm in any danger at the moment. If any of them come anywhere near my dwarves, I will just change my woodcutter to be a military dwarf temporarily, and he will make short work of the dingoes. And you notice that some dwarves are moving faster than others while they're running around carrying all their crap. That's because different items do have different weights in this game. Stone weighs a ton. And my dwarves aren't very strong yet because, I mean, they just got here. Okay. Job item misplaced. Means something happened to whatever it was that dwarf was about to take. It might be because the wagon's been disassembled. So it might have moved the item and it just confused him temporarily. Let's page back over to here. and continue on. Now, we don't really want our miners doing all of the hauling and menial labor. So what we're going to do is we're going to page back over to Dwarf Therapist. And these guys here are our miners. Bim Tholdicol and Rakust Sorbideller, I guess? These guys are our miners. They're one of the most important dwarves you can have. We don't want them doing menial labor, so let's come over here and let's turn off all of the menial labors for our mining dwarves. And the same with the other one. And we'll commit the changes. Now our mining dwarves will do nothing but what they're good at, mining. While we're paused, let's come over here and let's designate another room to be cut out. We're going to designate a pretty large room here. We're going to go 20 by 20. And we're going to cut we're just going to cut a door right there. And our mining dwarves, once they finish the job that they're working on, which right now is grabbing a drink, we'll come down here and start mining. It has started raining. This area here is going to be my food production area. I'm going to start my farms here. I'm also going to have an interim food stockpile here. I use multiple food stockpiles when I do Dwarf Fortress. I have a interim food stockpile, which I use for plants that I brought in from the wild or that I've grown. And then I have a prepared food stockpile, which is where I put all of the booze that I brewed out of those plants or the meals that I've cooked out of those plants. Because if you cook a meal, not only does the food go further, but it's also higher quality, and dwarves who are eating and drinking higher quality food are happier and less likely to wig out and destroy the entire fortress in an epic tantrum spiral. So I usually have one stockpile that's very close to my farms and my production workshops that only allows plants or raw meats or whatever. And then I have another one that is close to my dining hall that has all of the prepared foods and the booze and all that stuff. Because when dwarves have nothing else to do, they're going to hang out at the Great Hall. And I'll show you how to do that next episode. This one's already running a little bit long. Actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to end this one here. This is a good stopping point for episode 1. Episode 2, which, you know, I don't really feel like I got a whole lot accomplished this episode. I may go ahead and do episode 2 today. Or I might even do episode 2 and 3 today. But episode 2, I'm going to focus on getting my food production online. I'm going to focus on expansion a little bit more of my living area and getting my dwarves a place to sleep that isn't out there in the middle of the brook under the rain. I'm going to see if I can find a good place to put my master dining hall. Hopefully get a couple of immigrant waves, get all of my resources moved inside, and then start looking towards defense. So this has been Nightdagger with Let's Play Dwarf Fortress, and I'll catch you guys next time.